Italian born and raised, Valentina spent 24 years of her life in Kenya as a businesswoman and eventually moved to South Africa in 2017. Mother of three beautiful and accomplished souls, Valentina, following her awakening later in life, established the first pranic energy healing center in South Africa in 2018 named Wings and Me. As a result, she started opening her own spiritual gifts, becoming an internationally certified pranic energy healer, serving a wide variety of patients and students. She also holds several diplomas, including one in psychotherapy, dream analysis, and crystal healing. Through her own spiritual evolution, she has recently developed the Inner Active Mastery Therapy, abbreviated to IAM, which she defines as the new level of psychology. This is a therapeutic journey applying quantum healing, psychology, spiritual teachings, and ancient knowledge to assist hundreds of people across the world healing from their traumatic emotional experiences in 10 easy steps. Envisioning and actualizing the creation of the non-profit organization, the Spiritual Council, in early 2021 has been the natural evolution of her journey to serve others. This time through helping humanity understand that we are not separated beings, but that we are all part of the same human race, and as such, we are co-creating and evolving into higher frequencies of existence together as one. As the Executive Director of the Spiritual Council in Africa, Valentina is also an advisor to the United Consciousness Board in creating the Manual for Happiness. She has also appeared in numerous online awareness events, sharing her knowledge and love with others.
All right, namaste everyone. I would like to start thanking Dr. Vikrant, most importantly, because the topic for my presentation that is very, is in my heart as it forms the core of my mission of service to others. And as a member of United Consciousness, we also believe that the best way to learn something is to teach it. So here I am, as a work in progress. We are also work in progress all the time, having endured my fair share of trauma in the past 55 years. And I can tell you that from my first-hand experience, that you can and you should use your traumatic experiences as a catalyst for your personal growth. So I promise that I will tell you all about it and how to get there. But first, I want to share my joy. I'm actually ecstatic because I've been witnessing finally science trying to align with the very same spiritual beliefs that I hold. And so to celebrate this long-awaited breakthrough, let me share with you what science says about today's topic, which is post-traumatic growth. So it was developed by psychologists, two of them, both with PhD, Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Colquhoun, in the mid-1990s. And post-traumatic growth was defined by them as a theory that explained this kind of spiritual transformation that follows trauma. So it is based on the knowledge that people who endure psychological struggle following adversity can often see positive growth afterward. So post-traumatic growth refers to what can happen when somebody who has difficulty in bouncing back from experiencing a traumatic event, meaning that an event that has challenged the person to the core of their belief, will endure also psychological struggles in between, most time also through mental or physical illnesses, then ultimately finds a sense of personal growth. So the crisis I'm talking about are, of course, related to death of loved ones, divorce, loss of a job, and bigger things like natural disaster, war, sexual abuse, betrayal, or situation where our world is literally being divided from where we were and then where we are now. So before it happened and after it happened. So it's a definition of a moment that really has changed the life as we know it. But as it happens more often than not, and now we are going to speak from a less scientific perspective, and we just talk about something different. The trauma causes spiritual growth because that strength that is needed and it is required to get out of that trauma can only come as a call from the spirit self, from the higher soul, from that part of us who knows the universal truth, who knows why we have chosen to incarnate in this lifetime. So if it was left to our limited human strength, most people will definitely succumb to their trauma and their emotions, of course, that accompany any traumatic experience, thus causing the soul to leave prematurely the human form. And that's why a lot of people develop, terminal illnesses. And with that, they also leave the opportunity to further develop their character and their personality. So, in truth, to the keen observer of the human condition, trauma is one of the biggest catalysts to spiritual awakening and spiritual growth as a result. So, why do we say so? Simply because amidst our self created busy lives, full of deadlines, distraction, numbing coping mechanism, we create the opportunity for trauma to take over. You see, if we were just in a state of peace and contentment as a start, we wouldn't be looking at all beyond those extremely enjoyable feelings. Thus, we'd be stalling our spiritual development. So, in a nutshell, being uncomfortable is this state in which most people, unfortunately, needs to be in order to cultivate introspection and to look within their life cycle, so to find the patterns of limiting beliefs that have led them to the state of emotional trauma that they are in the first place. It is that chronic state of utter discomfort that will eventually ignite the search for a way out. And the way out, as you probably know already through following all the United Consciousness event, is looking inward and discover why we are suffering. And the transmutation of suffering into acceptance, contentment, and then eventually peace comes as the final destination for the enlightened soul. And how to get there is the journey called spiritual growth. And trauma is the vehicle we often use to reach that destination. So, as early promised, I'm going to discuss also what are the tools that we can use to constructively transcend trauma and, of course, attain spiritual growth. A lot of people tell you a lot of things. I enjoy teaching, getting you to understand what it all means, but most importantly, what's the way out? And that's what I really enjoy teaching people, the way out, because there is a way out. And the way out can only be taught by people who've been there before you and found the way. We can go through all the scriptures, everything. There are a little bit of truths everywhere. But ultimately, nobody has given us from beginning to end how to go about it. And that's the mission of the Spiritual Council in Africa, to whom I'm the executive director, and is to teach people ways to overcome this seemingly endless cycle of suffering. So let's start by saying that simply waiting for time to pass, that does not result in personal growth. It is not time that heals, but how you use that time. So how do we process the shock of trauma? We often think about the distressing events over and over, again and again, day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute. We soak into remembering how the trauma has generated, how it has affected us, and how we are feeling afterwards. So this time spent constantly thinking about the trauma over and over creates and cements, most important, it cements within you the emotional feelings of loss, of abandonment, of grief, of hopelessness, of depression, of sadness, and the anxiety and the desperation. And it does that, and it makes you feel that in every now moment. So it is like we keep on living the traumatic event every time the emotions are generated by the thought of the traumatic experience. And guess what? This leaves us in a constant state of trauma, day in, day out. It also creates something physical. It creates and consolidates neurological pathways in response to the trauma, pathways that become permanent if we don't swiftly act to correct the way our neurons fire. So the first step we need to take after the first necessary period of feeling the feelings, which is very, very important, is to proactively move towards developing new principles for living, principles that involve doing things differently, be having altruistic behavior, having a mission in life and a purpose that goes beyond the oneself. So the trauma is then transformed into something that's useful not only for the self, but also for others. And here, hear me well, I'm not minimizing someone's pain and suffering. I'm not advocating that we must forget the traumatic event. What I'm saying is that if we want to exit the cycle of pain that comes with a traumatic experience, we need to consciously choose to direct our attention towards what we want to feel instead of what we have been feeling. And this process does not necessarily erase the pain at all. But over time, I promise you that it offers new ways to as nobody, and I believe nobody, wants to feel sad or in danger or sick or feeling being a victim of circumstances for the rest of their lives. We all want to ultimately feel happy, feel safe, feel understood, and feel loved. And those feelings need to be found first and then constantly stimulate them. So, a technique that I use to overcome my own trauma, I'm not exempt from it, in spite of the fact that I've been on a spiritual journey for the long time ever. Every morning, I choose what I want to feel for that day. Literally, every day, I can decide what I want to feel. So if today I want to feel, I don't know, I want to feel united with people, I want to feel more loving, more grateful, more understanding, I wake up and I write that actually in my little diary. I put the date and then I put what I want to feel today. And then underneath I write, how can I find ways to stimulate those feelings? Because it's only by keep on finding them first within you and then stimulate them constantly, the feeling that you want to feel, like joy, happiness, safety, belonging, then we can continue feeding the happy neurons instead of feeding those ones that took us down the path of re-experiencing the traumatic feelings. In this process, we literally physically build new pathways, new ways of responding to traumatic events. And trust me, traumatic events, they keep on happening for as long as we have things to learn, for as long as we hold limiting beliefs, for as long as we hold trauma, life will keep on giving us these experiences. So once you've tried it the first time, you realize that yes, it takes experiential, it takes repetition, it takes a lot of strength. It's easier to fall deep into the old patterns of victimism. That's the easiest way possible. That is like a subconscious programming. But it takes much strength to get out of it and try to choose to do things differently. And that is your higher soul that allows you and gives you that support that you need to come out of it. And trust me that every day it is a choice that we all have in every now moment to choose how we want to feel. And this is a very empowering statement I've just made. Every day we have a choice that in every now moment we can decide how we want to feel. And as I said, transformation won't happen in a day, but repetition makes one perfect. And I truly wish, if you're experiencing negative emotion right now, to find the strength within you to try out new ways of being. I also want to highlight that there is nothing wrong or abnormal regarding those people who do not want to choose the path of post-traumatic growth, as trauma is about loss, and people who are already more vulnerable than others are more susceptible to trauma. May be harder for them to see the bigger picture on their own. And these people may require therapy, may require time in solitude, may require literally somebody who hold their hands and take them through that time of their life. So say that if you are one of those who have chosen the growth avenue, to evaluate whether or not or to what extent you have achieved growth after trauma, I would like you to look for 5 response areas. Okay, so if you have moved, and doesn't matter how far you've moved, even a little step forward is a fantastic example of growth. So look into appreciation of life. Where am I at? Relationship with others. Where am I at? New possibilities in life. Am I stuck or moving? Personal strength. Am I still falling or I'm picking myself up? And then last but not least, spiritual change. Spiritual change is one very important aspect, as reconnecting to our spirit can actually play a factor in being open to experiencing post-traumatic growth. And many people seek out spiritual experiences after trauma or report that their participation perhaps in religious event prepares them for spiritual growth after this traumatic event. And spiritual practices, but not necessarily religious, such as pondering how life experiences relate to our understanding of who we are and our place in the world, encourages that sort of contemplation that helps them process the trauma. And also by routinely practicing forgiveness. And I want you to really write down this word: forgiveness, acceptance, gratefulness, or relaxation and reflection through meditation and yoga practices. a suitable therapist, people can literally be transformed in positive way they did not anticipate. As you know now, life can take on new meaning as people evolve from the role of victim to victor as they emerge from a trauma. So my advice is always not to waste unnecessary fuel or unnecessary energy to feed that trauma. Find ways to make trauma your friend. Find ways to make trauma your teacher. Try to understand it, understand why it came about. And once you find that understanding, and that understanding can only come through introspection with the ways I've highlighted earlier. I have just come out, or I'm still coming out of a very painful time of my life. And that understanding of why it has happened and realizing what are the limiting beliefs I'm holding, and that's why I'm suffering so much, have taken me to be in solitude, in an hibernation mode for a few months. But that has helped me to come out stronger because it has guided me straight out of that suffering by improving and strengthening my personality and my character. And of course, that's me, and we all handle life crises in different ways. But ultimately, the goal of post traumatic growth is to explore and find meaning in our experiencing, finding positives in the distressive aftermath of every trauma. And if you think of it, it is, after all, our ultimate goal in life to make this existence, this life, this experience a meaningful one. Being into the conscious process of constant self development because as we overcome our own sufferings, guess what? We can teach others how to end theirs. And the human condition right now is very painful. And I'm so glad that I belong to this huge supportive community of United Consciousness where we are all happily, literally happily striving through our own suffering. And once we're out of it, we have new tools, a new way to help others to come out of this. So if you're interested in personal growth or seeking further guidance on how to overcome trauma, do contact us at the Spiritual Council as we have truly invested our resources and knowledge in improving people's lives. Because through understanding emotion and the role the emotion plays in our very own cycle of suffering is ultimately the way out of it. So I want to thank you for your time, for listening to me, and I wish you peace, tons of peace today and always. So namaste.
Thank you very much, Valentina ji, and great discourse on how to convert post-traumatic stress disorder into post-traumatic growth. You mentioned about science, you mentioned about spiritualism also. You mentioned also about the techniques that has worked for you, like choose every morning how do you want to feel today, and second, to find the ways to stimulate that feeling and repeat it again and again so that you can develop better neural pathways. You also mentioned about the importance of forgiveness, acceptance, gratefulness, and meditation. You also mentioned about the response areas, what what we need to appreciate about our life, what are the new possibilities in life, what spiritual changes I need to develop, so that making trauma a friend, a teacher, rather than suffering by a prospective setting, so that I can become from victim to victor in life. I'm sure it will be fairly helping to our audience. And thank you for being with us always, blessing us whenever we request you to. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Miss Valentina for her exhilarating performance. Thank you so much.